Is the sport being over-governed?
Yes. When you look at other things, measures like measuring sock height, for example, just it's gone beyond ridiculous with a few things. I've got nothing against the new rule of you can't throw drink bottles away. Sure, I mean, it actually irritates me when I see a rider middle of nowhere or in the mountains and just hoik a bottle into a ravine or just into a field. But if it's in where there's public and 100% someone's going to grab it, people are begging for them, like the guy in Tour of Flanders with Michael Schaert, and he got DQ'd. That was just beyond ridiculous. And with the stink that was kicked up by the riders, they've now amended that rule. And we found that out during the Liège-Bastogne-Liège coverage. We were worried for Demi Vollering because she threw a bidon on the freeway just into the concrete barrier. And incidentally, it's just a fine now if you do it. Although it's 15% of the prize money. Let's face it, the girls don't get enough prize money as it is. So she threw away 15% of her prize money. But it hit the concrete barrier and bounced back into the group she was riding in. That was probably worse than the actual act of throwing a bottle, just the danger it caused coming back into that group.
A bit like what threw Geraint Thomas out of the Giro last year, for example.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was pure accident, really bad. Like that they hit a big bump or bunny hopping over a speed hump and someone's bottle came out of their bike and he just happened to hit it. It wasn't thrown away as such. So, it was really bad luck. And then to see him then during the week with his, on top of that climb in the Tour of Romandie, and then, his hand slipped off the bars. Ryan, we've all been in a position where you feel like you just have no control over the bike when you're that cold. And he just flipped. We've all had stupid moments and we've come off and gone, geez, that was dumb. So I felt sorry for him seeing him go down like that. But in the end, I mean, okay, it cost him a possible stage win, but he still won the Tour.
Let's talk a bit about commentary. When you stopped racing your bike, I talked to you about taking up a position as commentator because I thought you had the gift of the gab. That's pretty obvious. And you said you weren't certain about it. You weren't sure if you wanted to sort of stay in at that level, but you certainly are. You're in the thick of it most of the time, and you clearly can't get enough of cycling. Just talk to me about sort of the decision to move to commentary, and now that you're there, you feel like you're sort of in your spot all the way through to retirement?
Well, it just sort of grew on me. The idea was there to do some commentary, and I got the opportunity through SBS to go with them to the Tour de France. And do some of the hosting pre-post stage with Mike Tomalaris. And then, during that time, I was also doing some of the commentary. I've been doing Tour Down Under. That was sort of my first real gig at the sort of world tour level and working with Phil and Paul, which was really good. And I really appreciated not only the organisation of Tour Down Under asking me to come on board and be on the commentary team, but also the reception of Phil and Paul and the way they took me under their wing in commentary. Because when you've got a double act like they had, it's actually really tough being the third wheel because they don't need a third person, or they didn't need a third person. But they were really, really inclusive, and it was great fun to do it. And then since then, I've been able to do a lot of other commentary gigs, and it's very far from being full time. And that's the part of it that I enjoy, is that it's sort of part time casual. And being there at the Tour is always fun, although it's exhausting, as you know. And we talked very briefly about how last year we did it from Sydney. I did it from Sydney, the commentary. Matt and Bridie were in Melbourne. The one thing I didn't really miss was all the driving that comes along with being at the Tour de France. By the end of the month at the Tour, you've clocked up around 6,000 to 6,500 kilometres in the car, and it is absolutely exhausting.
I know that from experience. And what do you think about watching it at night time? I'm not a big fan. It's the first tour since 1996 that I've watched in Australia. I had to listen to you and Matt. I'm not used to that either. But, it grew on me. It's okay.
Well, now we know how the couch peloton feels.
Exactly.
They do it every year in, year out, all night, don't miss a stage. Some go to bed sometimes on flat stages, they find, okay, there's a lot of sitting up for 10 minutes of really good action. So they record or just watch highlights. But once we started doing it, once it was on, I didn't, it didn't feel like I was doing it through the middle of the night, because that was my new time schedule. I was on European time, sleep in till midday, 1 p.m, get up and about in the afternoon, then go into work in the evening, and call it all night. And it just felt normal. It was no worries. No, it certainly is easier doing it during the day. But nonetheless, once I got commentating and watching and following the race, I was up and about, and the adrenaline rush of them coming into the sprints was, it was just as good as ever.
I know that you're paid to talk about it, but when they're coming in and you know that you have to speak, is there moments where you're just sort of leaning and trying to steer the fictional bike somewhere in the bunch? Are you still sort of riding the sprint when you're calling it?
Well, if you ask Matt Keenan, I definitely am. We're leaning in. I'm elbowing him. We're hitting each other in the arm, and when we're seeing different things, and we're both getting properly excited about what's going on. And I'm definitely, I couldn't put a percentage on it, but for a part, I'm riding vicariously, at least, through the guys on screen.
And what was always fun about interviewing you when you were a bike rider, when you do the sprint, like seconds afterwards, when your heart rate's still high and you're out of breath, you still had a fantastic recall of it. Is your commentary assisted by the fact that you would analyse your sprints when you were riding? Did you watch a lot of yourself sprinting after the fact, so that you could sort of run into it?
Yeah, I watched, as much as I watched myself, I watched all the others as well. Watch what other guys do, whether I won or lost, or didn't matter who won. I'd watch the sprints, see where I went wrong, see what the others did right, see what I could have done better, see where I might have got away with something, a mistake on my own part, but still been able to win, and just try and put all that stuff in the memory bank. And that's how you build experience. And then from having that experience of racing, it does help me. I mean, I don't call the live blow by blow in the last 200 or 300 meters. That's Matt's job. But then my job at that moment is not so much to focus on what Matt is saying, but to watch the sprint and watch what's going on, and be able to have an immediate analysis of not only who it was that won. That's the obvious. We know who won, but what else happened in the sprint, and then how he did it, or she, because we get to comment, luckily for us, on a lot of women's racing as well. So I get to analyse straight away, but I'm concentrating, trying to watch everything in the sprint, and how it all went down. Of course, when I get a couple of replays and I can speak over it, and then I get to see another angle, and you get to see other aspects of the sprint. And that's the most enjoyable part for me, is seeing that action. It happens so quickly, and the little details that make a big difference, I like to be able to point those out to people watching.
We've gone quite a long way already, and we've covered a lot of topics, but I did originally want to talk to you just about the sprint and the green jersey competition of the Tour de France in 2021. I spoke with Sam Bennett recently. We've got another chat coming up in an hour or so. He got the green jersey. He's sort of lifted himself up a level last year. Can you go through perhaps the top 5 of last year and just give me a quick synopsis of where you imagine them being?